Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. We're slowly letting people in. Sorry for the slight delay. There are almost 80 participants now, so this is very exciting. A couple more keep on joining, but we're going to start now already because it's already a tiny bit past 10. Welcome, everyone. My name is Katarina. I'm a policy advisor in the EKJET project, and I'll be your moderator today. And I hope you can all see my slides, because before we start officially, I want to make sure that you know you can access translation. So normally when you join the meeting, you should have had the possibility to choose a language from the drop-down menu. And then here are some images of how you can choose the language. We have translation available in Bahasa Indonesia, Vietnamese, Thai, and Mongolian. For the latter, you will have to choose Arabic. Very sorry about that, but we could not select Mongolian as a language in MS Teams. And when you click confirm, this is, if you didn't see the little window at the beginning, you can go through more here through the 3 dots, and then choose language and speech, and then you can, like, you have the same window and have to click confirm again at the end. If you're having any trouble, please let us know. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful. It's first the 3 dots, language and speech, choose a language, and then interpret to original language. Okay. So this is how you can translate the slides as well. So at the bottom, you see the 3 dots again. You can click translate slides, and then here are usually the languages that you can translate the slides into. Hope that works for everyone. Okay. Don't see anybody in the chat who has problems. If there is anybody, please let us know. And we're trying to help you individually. Okay, then we're going to the welcome. And here I would like to turn to my colleague Götz for some welcoming words.
Thank you, Katarina. Welcome to all of you to this exchange. We are very happy that so many colleagues from all over the world joined us for this meeting today. The project Just Energy Transition in Coal Regions, EKJET, is providing a platform together with other implementing partners for exchange of coal regions in the Global South that are confronted with mine closure and coal phase out, and want to shape the structural change to a green economy in a socially just and inclusive way. Once a month, this is our plan for this year, we invite to a webinar an expert exchange to which participation is possible from all over the world. Today, our topic is skilling, upskilling, and reskilling for a just transition in coal regions. People skilled for new green technologies are necessary for the transformation to a sustainable economy. Last year in Germany, we had a huge debate about how to organize a higher share of renewable energies in the heating of buildings. This would request a much higher share of heat pumps on the basis of renewable power in residential and office buildings, and the drastic reduction of gas and oil heating system. It became obvious that in the training programs for young people, heat pumps had not been sufficiently integrated. This made the public debate even more difficult and the opposition even harder to the necessary change. The implementation of new technologies needs to be prepared by skilling programs. We know that we will see an enormous structural change in coal regions in the next years to come. Coal mining is getting more and more capital intense. Less workers are needed. Coal phase out will lead to a decline in the demand for miners and people working in the processing of coal. Even in the skilling programs of young people who start their work in coal mining, the change of their field of work due to the decline of coal in the years to come will have to be planned. Workers will need to be prepared to work in new growing sectors if they lose their jobs. So what are the qualifications of workers in coal minings, and what will be the qualifications that will be needed in the future? What is the contribution of mining companies to meet their responsibilities, not only to prepare formal labor force that in most cases are dominated by men, but also those who work in informal structures, often women, who collect rests of coal and who sell food to coal mining workers. Skilling can open chances for more gender justice and new just roles. In the case of layoffs of workers, how can qualification offers be organized in a short period of time in the regions? These are the key questions for today's Expert in Change, and I'm very happy that we were successful in inviting such a distinguished panels and that you joined as panelists. And with that, I would like to thank all the panelists for participating today and wish us a fruitful exchange. And with this, I would like to give back to my colleague, Katharina. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Götz, for laying out the meeting a little bit and the main questions that we're going to face or that we're going to discuss today. As you mentioned already, there are three excellent speakers that we've invited today. I'm very happy that we have the panel on about the panel that we have on. We have first, we'll hear from Gunjan Jujunwala, who leads the Just Energy Transition work at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, short CEEW, one of India's leading think tanks for climate change, and she's actively working with several central ministries and state governments, and her focus is on defining the contours of an equity-driven energy transition in the Indian context. She looks at this especially in relation to the political economy and policy landscape of the country, as well as in response to global conversations. Gunjan specializes in issues of public sector governance, community engagement, and gender, all really critical to the issue of just transition. And she reads just transition as essential, like essentially a socio-economic concept, and her engagement with the concept spans over more than a decade of work experience academically, both academically and professionally. Then we have Marco Schmidt, who is working for the trade union project Revierwende in Lusatia, East Germany. Revierwende basically means transformation of the coal mining area. He's working in this project since January 2022. And since December, he is leading the team of Revierwende in Lusatia. He has a bachelor in legal studies and a master in social sciences, where he focused on socio-ecological transformation, citizen participation, and migration. And last but not least, we're joined by Ravishankar Korgal, who is an automotive engineer and has a lot of experience, more than 30 years, if I remember correctly, in engineering education, in industry, in the TVET sector, and the private sector development. He's currently working as a technical advisor in GIZ, in the German Development Agency in India, located in Aurangabad, and he's implementing the Indo-German program for vocational education and training, about which we'll hear more today. And now I would like to hand over to Gunjan to start with the first presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Katharina. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, and to the IKI JET community for this very important knowledge exchange platform, bringing us practitioners together. I'm sure there's much to learn for me from my co-panelists. Today's discussion, since that I thought of as the starting speaker, is on how do we think about skilling and upskilling workers engaged in coal transition. A few caveats as I start. The first is that the way we've designed this study and the way we are thinking about it is in context, like Katharina's introduction said, that I think of coal transition in the context of India's political economy. And so India's political economy at this point is coal being central to our energy security. And so what it means for doing research in this space is that we need to be providing a lot of critical evidence that that a transition needs, that a just energy transition needs. And so what the premise of the presentation is that you would have also, each of us would have heard in our respective work environments that one way for a just energy transition is to find alternate jobs for workers. We had heard this for over a year and a half or two of just energy transition becoming a topic in India, that we need to look for alternate jobs. So at my organization, we thought, can we pause and get into the ground and understand what then are these skills that will enable workers to find alternate jobs? And how do we then start looking for alternate jobs? And what would be some of the ecosystem enablers? So it's really these three questions that I've premised today's presentation on. And before I launch into the technical presentation, to introduce my organization as well, the Council on Energy, Environment and Water is a think tank working specifically on climate change in India. Our idea is to be impacting sustainable development at scale using data, integrated analysis, and strategic outreach. We work quite centrally with several central government ministers and state governments. So India is a unitary federal model. We've got regional states as well. And so we work with states in India and across the entire spectrum of climate change, sectors that require transformations like power sector and energy transitions, and also factors that influence our quality of life and are intrinsically related to climate change. So our food, water, how we cool ourselves in context, how we warm ourselves, mobility, and so on. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I've spent some time laying the premise, but essentially, how do we start thinking about a worker-centric energy transition? And the reason I'm specifying worker-centric is that once we start thinking of what are the community dimensions, some of the research puzzles change, because the way the community is associated and dependent on a coal mine is quite different from that of a workers' dependency. So how do we start? So the idea is that we should start by exploring the coal mining ecosystem using large macro data on how is coal distributed across a country. And what are some of those interesting nuances that one has to engage with? We should then start thinking about, let's get down into what is that organizational map for a coal mining company, and how are those skills very different across the organizational map, because your prior learning, the skills that you have, will determine the alternate jobs that you can eventually begin to upskill and acquire. What are those enablers for a worker's ability to transition, skill being only, technical skills being only one. So I'd also highlight that there's an important focus on socio-emotional skills, your ability to migrate, your ability to comprehend a transition that a sector may not be around. So socio-emotional skills become very important. While technical skills can be imparted through technical platforms, how are policymakers engaging with socio-emotional skills? Locating alternate economic opportunity for workers. And instead of thinking about what are the, we've also seen that there's a lot of good research out there that does a perception analysis that asks workers, what are the skills that you would, sectors that you would prefer to go to? Our understanding is that while that's important to understand perceptions, it's also important to understand where are these jobs in the current economic sectors, where are these jobs growing that are likely to absorb these millions of workers. In India's context, millions of workers. So not talk about a worker's perception in isolation, but in the context of the economic opportunity, and to factor externalities that will enable a just energy transition. Next slide, please. So I'll spend about a minute talking about India's coal ecosystem. Like I said, the first point is really to zoom out and see what is that larger coal ecosystem. And so you'd see that India's coal mining is clustered around specific states. 4 or 5 states are coal rich, of which Odisha produces almost 24. So a quarter of India's coal production comes from Odisha. India has essentially a central a PSU arrangement that called the Coal India Limited, which has almost the largest ton of percentage of production is there, but it's also got like private production and so on. But the largest is CIL. And so we've got Odisha at 24%, but interestingly, employs a much smaller portion than Jharkhand, which is at 17% and hires almost half of India's coal mine workers, which is over 50%. So when we zoom out and we see the production, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, MP, these are all states in India, it's important to see that it's not always that the highest production percentage means the highest portion of employment. The difference would be factors like mechanization in mining itself. So while Jharkhand has 17%, hires a lot more of the workers. Similarly, what type of mines do we have? Open cast or underground mines? Currently in India, we have 96% of our mines are open cast mines, and only 3.9 are underground mines. But underground mines, given the style of operation, where the possibility of mechanization is a lot lesser. There's a lot more manual work involved. Underground mines proportionally employ a lot more workers than open cast mines do. So the intention of this slide is really to zoom out and say that when engaging with the larger coal ecosystem, it's important to see what are the nuances and differences. And then, of course, there's a point around gender where perhaps directly employed female workers in the sector are about, like in the formal sector, are maybe 8%, 8 to 10% of the total number of workers that are employed. And then, of course, there's a lot more of how Götz was mentioning in his introduction, that there's a lot more gender engagement once we start engaging with the informal category, although poorly documented in terms of women and in terms of gender and mining. Next slide, please. Yeah, so it's important so I'll just say, I'm not going to spend a lot of time getting into every designation and every skill associated with the designation, because I'm sure it's going to be common for some countries, slightly differently organized for some other countries. But the idea is that to draft such a map, or if such a map exists, and engaging with such a map is absolutely important for 3 reasons. First is that to examine skill sets with the mindset of improving mining efficiency, if that's the context, if that's the political economy of your country, or for what is the alternate sector transferability. So once we start seeing that, okay, we've got foreman, headman, overcharge surveyor, all in the executive worker categories, that would mean they come with a certain educational background, they've received some sort of formal training. So once you start engaging with the grades and the skill level, it becomes a lot clearer as to what are the alternate economy options, what are the transition options for different categories of workers. The second is to map the contractual obligations of the hiring company towards its employees. And I think this is an absolutely important category, because very often do we spend a lot of time researching on what is going to be the impact, and we spend very little time in trying to understand what is that obligation matrix as well. So who is most likely obligated to be enabling this worker transition. So if you're a formal worker, most likely, formal and direct worker, most likely the company that you're hired with will look after either in terms of an early retirement benefit or in terms of upskilling. But if you are an informal worker, you're not on their direct payrolls, then where does the obligation lie? And the last point is that we can also undertake this exercise, also important, to understand how do we then negotiate in terms of a solution-oriented mindset. So if obligation lies differently for different categories of workers, then who do we start engaging with as key stakeholders? Do we engage with labor union, for example? Is labor union adequately representing of all of the entire informal workforce? So big questions there in that start appearing onto itself once we get down there, attempt a more nuanced understanding the ecosystem, the differences there, and then how an organization itself is laid out. Next slide. And so the coal mining, so when we looked at the coal mining workforce, I've mentioned this already, so I'll go through it quite quickly, is that we've got the executive workers, mostly permanent and occupy managerial positions. Non-executive workers, also permanent, do mostly both technical and supervisory. And then the contractual workers, which is in the name itself, they are temporary workers, and a lot of them, they do technical work, but that's of operators, drivers, assistants, manual work, and so on. And then there are levels. So this could be quite typical to India, but we've got levels that say how skilled are you, or what are the skills that you're going to have in performing your job. So if you're level 1 to 5, you're in the non-executive and contractual worker category, and anything above 5.5 is the executive worker category. And so when we look at skills, so now I'll just shift a little into when thinking of a transition, we're looking at skills on two fronts. We're looking at technical knowledge related to electrical and mechanical engineering, mining, geology, so all your technical knowledge of mining, and then your socio-emotional skills, your ability to migrate. What are some of the social barriers? It becomes a lot more important when talking about women and just transition. How do you access skilling and reskilling opportunities? So socio-emotional skills become very important as well when thinking of access to alternate employment. And the skills of coal mine workers can also be, we can look at, so just to give you a flavor of the methodology, and is that you can look at official government documents, but that are comparing the expected skill set level of the workers within the sector with the workers' own perception of their skills. So it will be a combination of looking at official documents and conducting an on-ground survey. And my last slide, if you could help move, Katrina, the last slide is on, so how do we then think of what can workers be moved into? Like I said, one way is to do a perception understanding. But what we thought is more relevant, because a lot of data coming in from India showed that almost 70% of workers would prefer to go back to agriculture. Now, that in itself is interesting, but also very difficult as policy thinkers to execute, because agriculture in India itself is looking at climate change related challenges and needs to be, and it's also looking at a lot of climate change related adaptation. So we don't want to think of a policy where workers go back to a situation where they're going to see further transition related challenges. And so it was important to map what is the growth potential of some of the alternate sectors that are localized. So we didn't look at nationwide growing sectors. We looked at state-wise, because socio-emotional assessments of workers in India show that labor is migrant in nature. It's of course very different. Like I know in Germany, labor is a lot less migrant, prefers a lot less migration than would possibly be in the Indian case. So it really depends on context to context. So we looked at some of the economic surveys to see what are the growing sectors. Maybe they're just showing year-on-year growth, in the survey books, or it could be that there's a strategic push through government policy announcements for these sectors. We also needed to identify whether the average income in the coal mining across the occupational map that I presented to you matches what these other sectors are paying, and if there are any similar and matching non-wage benefits like education, healthcare, whether that's an organized sector or an unorganized sector, and what are the compensation and other forms of benefits and so on. And then we undertake a skill. So this is all around skill needs, right? So does the sector have the capacity to even absorb the labor that would be in the future displaced? And then we do a skill matching exercise, which tries to understand what are the skill requirements of the alternate sector and what are the skills that workers currently have. And so the last point, like I'd mentioned in the opening slide, is so what are then some of the enablers that we have to be that will kickstart the matching exercise? Can we think of, and I think Marco and Mr. Korgel would be coming in to talk about how they have really managed some of these, is what is the role of using technology in helping match these skills, the role of labor unions as actors in the consultative process, overall skill development ecosystem, the TVET and the ITI systems in India that are technical vocational education training. So how do we work towards making the skilling ecosystem more robust? And of course, diversifying the regional economy with both green and traditional sectors, that is in response to also a changing international ecosystem. So if there are certain goods and products that are going to be difficult to keep manufacturing because of a changing need internationally for more green, then how do we start thinking about what that regional economic diversification would be? Because the overall theme is that we don't want to be thinking of worker transition in the abstract without the context that other sectors itself are also seeing a transition. So I'll stop there. I hope I haven't taken up a lot of time.
Thank you, Gunjan. That was very interesting. I quickly stop sharing. I just wanted to say that if people have questions, we'll have a discussion part at the end where you can ask them. But in the meantime, you can already put them in the Q&A area. So if you, at the top of your MS Teams, you should be able to see the Q&A spots. Let me reshare, because then we're going directly to Marco's slides. Moment. Please, Marco, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Katharina. Thank you for the introduction and innovation for today. I will share some experiences and also some, I think, a little bit different points from Germany to the East Asian and Indian region. I think this is very important to say that there are, I think, big differences. So I will focus on the negotiations between the trade unions and the political actors for skilling the people, and also to look at some regional points. I think they are also important for you to know for the skill or for the change of the workers from the coal mining and power plant sectors to other sectors. So maybe you can show the next slide. Yes, thank you. I think this is, there's also a sentence on this slide. Maybe you can, not shown. That's okay. It's not that important. There was a sentence, or there is a sentence, the power of the people is the most important point. Also in Germany, it is important that the regions stand for their demands. Yes, thank you. And also that the people and the trade union members doing or bringing their demands to the federal politics. And the trade unions are very strong in the energy sector. We are organized at the energy companies with percentage of 90% are trade union members. So they are really strong, and they are they have the best salaries for skilled workers in all over Germany. So it's also better than in the automotive sector or something like this. I think this is also really important to say, because this workers are very important for the regional development. They have the money to spend in the region. Also, when we look at my region in the east of Germany, it is really structural weak. And so we need the salary from the coal mining sector and the workers to develop our region. And on the other hand, the problem is, will these workers stay in this region when they get a salary less 10, 15 or 20% from their salary in the coal mining and also energy sector? This is a big discussion, because in Germany we have a leakage and also a leakage of skilled workers, so they can go to other regions where they get a higher salary. So this is a big discussion here in Germany, and this is also a discussion for the trade unions. What are the future working places for these people, and that they also could get a good salary, and not and that they don't leave this region. You can show the next slide. This is, I think, also important in Germany and also in the European Union. We have different levels, and so the trade unions have to work on different levels for the perspective of the workers and also trade unions. And because the regions and in the end the companies gets support from different funds for the social and economical transformation. And the European Union, there are three really important funds. The Just Transition Fund, it's especially for the transition of the coal mining sector, also in Czech Republic and so on. The European Social Fund, this is for all the regions in Europe, and also the European Regional Development Fund. And for us, it is important that these funds not just focused on economical points, and it's also important that they are focused on good work, good labor conditions. This is not yet that good as the trade unions wants to have it, but we are working for it. And also the next level is the German level. There was a commission. I will speak about this on the next slide. And in Germany, we have about 40 billion euro spent to the coal regions. This is a really big fund, or these are different funds, also investment in the railways and also highways and so on, but also in research and development and so on. I will speak about it later. And then we have the levels of the federal states and the coal regions. And in every level, trade unions are involved and discuss about the development of the region, and also about the development and the skills for workers. So you can show the next slide, please. Yeah. Oh, that's not, yeah, thank you. Sorry. So the trade unions were members of the Commission on Growth, Structural Change and Employment. in lignite coal regions. This is really important to know because this was a commission with different representatives of different sectors. Also, there were representatives of the regions, the business and industry, energy industry, science, and also environmental associations. This commission was really important to say that Germany will phase out of coal until 2038. And this was a democratic consensus that also the workers in the coal mines and power plants said, okay, we can work with this date, 2038, because our trade union was a member of this commission. This is really important because also in Germany, we have big discussions about the phase out of coal mining and also to use coal for the energy. So it was important that the trade unions were involved in this commission. Also, the trade unions are working on the regional level. Example is the future workshop Alsatia. There were about 2,000 people involved in this process to speak about what we need in the future in this region. Also about the health sector, administration, infrastructure, and so on, and also about good working conditions. This is really important because working conditions are important about the question, will a person stay in the coal region or will they leave? I think this is, we have to focus on. Other questions like infrastructure is not that important to leave or stay in a region, but working conditions, salaries are important for the question stay or leave the region. And also we are, as the trade unions, are part of the regional decision councils. In these councils, they vote for projects for the coal funds to get money for different municipal projects, also for the industry, but also for social infrastructures, for schools and so on, to get supported from this coal region funds to support the regions for the transformation. You can show the next slide. Yes, and also our project, you can show the slide with Germany. I think this is easy to understand what I'm saying. We at the project, as the project Revierwende, we are working in the 3 different lignite road regions in Germany. And these regions are really focused on the energy sector. This is important to know. These are structural weak regions, and so we have to focus what is after the coal. And also there is a changing for especially in the East Germany. East Germany was long time a skilled workbench for other German and European companies. These companies now build up their production factories in the east of Germany and also in Asia and so on. So a lot of people lost their jobs, not just in the energy sector, also in other sectors. And so the region have to focus a new resilient economy. And the most important thing are the support of research and development and also innovation. But also there are some investments in administration and so on, to give the people new, good, qualified jobs, because the most people in Germany are good qualified, especially in the coal sector, and these are the most or best qualified people in the region, and so they have to get new jobs with good qualifications. And there are also some cooperations between the coal industry and other industries to that the workers can change from the coal sector to, for example, the train sector, to repair trains. And this is, I think, a good example, because in the train sector you have also good salaries. This is important for our trade unions, and also that they get a workplace with high skilled and so on. And you ask also for the female perspective. In Germany, there are about 20 to 25% of the coal workers, also in the mines and the power plants, are female workers. And so there are not the question just about demands. It's also about female workers, and with the bigger support of research and development, there will be also jobs for female workers. We see it in every research that, especially in science and research, there are more female workers than in the normal industrial working field. And so we have more focus on the regional development, because most of the female workers and skilled female workers leave the rural countries because they are structurally weak, they are conservative, and so on. And so they are leaving these regions to more open-minded regions with better perspectives for themselves. There are a lot of researchers, especially for the east of Germany. And so we can also talk about this. And we, as a project review vendor, we are also working with the workers in the power plants, and we are doing interviews with them. We are working together with the HR administration of the energy company, and also with the Workers' Council, to ask the 600 workers in one power plant what are they want to work in the future after 2028, because this is the first power plant who will phase out. And we are asking them, do you want to leave the company? Will you stay in the company, or will you also take the opportunity to get to go in pension with 58 years? It's really early. Also for Germany, it is really early. Normally, the pension starts with 67. But this is also a result of the commission, the coal commission, speak before, that the people from the coal mining and also power plants can go to pension with 58 if the power plants will phase out in the next 2 or 3 years. And so it is also a social decision that the people can leave this sector and don't have to look for new jobs in the last 10 years of their working biography. So I think I put some points that are important to understand. You can show the slide. Yes, of course, you can show the slide in the end, and just, yeah, you can look at the bullet points. So we are working in different fields, skilling, and also supporting the trade unions, the workers' councils, and so on. And we are also talking with young people. because in Germany we have a demographic problem. So there are not that much young people. We will lost until 2030 about 110,000 people in the labor market. And in this number, we also working with the migration and so on. And so we have a big leakage of workers in the future. And we need more workers, we need more young people, we need migration. But in Germany, we have a big discussion about migration and so on. And that's why it is important to have something democratic like this commission for the coal regions, also to have other commissions where trade unions and so on are involved, so that decisions are also supported from trade unions and other organizations and associations, that the region stands behind these decisions. This is really important. If the people don't stand behind these decisions, they also don't want to go to new skills, they are not want to be qualified and so on. And that's why it's also important to have a focus not just on the workers level, also to have a focus on the political level and the democratic level for the development of the regions, and so, in the end of good work and salaries for the workers. So now I will finish.
Great, thank you so much, Marco. This is really insightful. I think I really like that you put the context at the beginning, because as we saw, already in Gunja's presentation, in India, many coal mine workers are migrants. In Germany, we have a different focus on migration, because we need more migration, but the workers are more high-skilled labor. I also really liked or found very interesting the connection to transport that you made, that they can sort of find new jobs in transport. I would like to go to our next presenter. Ravi, could I invite you to the stage? Oops, I'm just gonna. So we're going to share the presentations after the talk. So yeah, don't be afraid. You will get all the information. Ravi, please, the stage is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Katharina. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone present here, and thank you, Just Transition Regional Platform team, for giving this opportunity to present our initiatives here. And today I'm going to share some of our success stories, especially focused on cooperative skill development, which we have initiated in few of the regions in India. Sorry. And these are mostly these initiatives are related to cooperative VT, that vocational education and training, mainly using the cluster approach. And I hope these initiatives, I think, are going to help for the cold regions, where we can definitely upskill the resources. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to actually brief you on following points. So I will just give you a brief update on current projects and information on GIZ India, and brief information about our program, that is Indo-German Program for Vocational Education and Training. It is funded by German government, BMZ ministry, and promote. And next, I'm going to explain you about some of the steps we have initiated to start these activities in the clusters, that is promoting cooperative skill development, and what are the stages, how we actually proceeded towards skilling the resources, and who are the partners and all those things. And the next is the key learnings. What are the best practices which can be replicated in other regions? This is just a brief of about presentation. Can you go to next slide, Katharina? Yeah, this is our portfolio, GIZ. I think most of you know about GIZ. GIZ is a German development agency. So currently it is working in more than 120 countries. Brief you about the GIZ India. GIZ presence in India, it is about more than 60 years in India, and it is working in, we are working in most of the major sectors: sustainable economic, ecological, and social development. And currently, we are actively involved in most of the significant initiatives in India with all the ministries, most of the ministries, including smart cities, clean India missions, and skill India. And currently, we have around 300 plus Indian nationals working in the projects, and 50 plus Germans and other nationals are involved in all these activities. And most of the thematic areas are energy, environment, sustainable urban and industrial development, sustainable economic development, and now most important topic is just transition. We are also actively involved in just transition activity and also green skilling. So currently our project is going to end here. Then we are going to next focus on green skilling, especially on electric vehicle technology and solar, wind energy, and all those areas. This is the program name, that is Indo-German Program for Vocational Education and Training. So our main objective is actually facilitating public and private sectors to come together to create a good environment, skilling ecosystem in the form of cooperativity to get the required skilled resources for the private sector. That is the main objective of this. And in this, actually, mainly we worked in clusters, identified all over India and few regions. And mainly we work with business membership organizations, BMOs. They are the industry. We usually in India, we call them as industry associations or the industry chambers. And our focus was on mainly 5 SDGs. You can see on the screen: no poverty, quality education, gender equality, and decent work condition, and the partnerships. Can you go to next slide, Katrina? Yes. So in this presentation, actually, I'm going to take a case study on one of the regions where I'm working. So currently I'm based at a location called as Aurangabad. It is around 300 kilometers from Mumbai. It is almost central region of India. And this place actually, we have mainly the cluster of uh, 3,000 automotive industries. I can go to next slide, Katharina. Yeah. So initially we started actually activity in Aurangabad, Bhiwadi, and Bangalore. Those are the 3 clusters. Aurangabad, we mainly focused on automotive, and Bangalore, we focused on electronics, and Bhiwadi, we focused on energy efficient construction. That was the phase 1, and we successfully implemented cooperative VT programs in these areas. And in the phase 2, we replicated these programs in other locations like Hyderabad, Kolkata, Chennai, Pune, Mumbai. Uh, go to next slide. Yeah, so just to give you an overview of this location, the place Aurangabad. So this is one of the 5th largest industrial district in Maharashtra. So Maharashtra is a regional state in India, and there are 195 large-scale enterprises here with an investment of 7 billion, and around 3,400 MSMEs industries are working here with an investment of around 4 billion euros. And in this complete cluster, actually automotive industries are dominating. There are 2 major OEMs present here. So one is Bajaj. Bajaj is a very known brand all over the world, and they manufacture two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Currently, they are coming up with a four-wheeler also, and these are locally popular, as well as they are also exporting to around 50 countries. These three-wheelers are very popular in most of the African countries. And other than automotive industry, there are beverage industry, pharma industry, white goods, plastic, electronics. All those industries are also present here. And there is a pharma cluster, and other than that electronic cluster, we have a hospital cluster here. And initially we started with a automotive cluster. After very much successful programs in automotive cluster, we expanded these programs, replicated these programs into other clusters. This is a brief about the location where I'm going to focus more on the activities in the next slide. Yeah, see, what is this cluster? We often discuss about the cluster. So what is the definition of cluster? So to define a cluster, cluster represents the entire value chain of the broadly defined industry. For example, if you take a automotive, from suppliers to end products, including supporting services and the special infrastructure required to actually manufacture the required components or the assemblies or the vehicles. And here we actually classified the organizations into two categories. One side, the industries, another side, the organizations who are actually involved in facilitating the skill initiatives. So we became actually a mediators or the facilitators for all these skilling initiatives, and we try to actually bridge this gap between these two organizations. If you consider the supporting organizations, we mainly work with industry associations, other institutions, and also the government institutions, vocational training institutions. Vocational training institutions are called as ITIs in India, and also private and government higher education institutions with a private sector and also government sector. And also we closely work with central government and the state governments to understand their schemes to get some funding for the industry associations. And parallelly, we also actually conducted so many roundtable meetings to actually bring them these two private and public sectors together to work in a good environment to understand the gaps. So that really helped us to actually develop this cooperative VT model here in Aurangabad. Can go to next slide. Yeah, this is very important slide. So actually how we started these activities. So this initiative was started in 2017. So initially it took some time for us to understand the cluster, ecosystem, stakeholders, and the supporting organizations who are really working and who are really interested to spend some valuable time with us to build this cooperativity model. So initially, we identified all those major partners, then we mapped them. We initially focused on automotive sector, and we identified the chambers, two major chambers here. Chamber of Marathwada Industries and Agriculture. Another one is a small scale industry association called as MASIA. And with the help of them, uh, we conducted so many roundtable meetings, awareness sessions, understand their problems, what type of skill resources are required for them currently, how they are working on developing these skill resources, what are the issues, what is the now connect between the industry and the academia, where are the gaps. All those things initially were identified in 6 to 8 months. It took some time for us. Then after getting all this information, understanding the stakeholders, identifying the partners, and mapping all these people, then we actually conducted a skill gap survey, and it took some almost 2 to 3 months to actually consult each one from industry side as well as academia side. And after completing this skill survey, we identified top 10 skills which are in demand. So I'll just name one or two here. And the first skill requirement was CNC operator, because most of the manufacturing industries use the CNC machines. There was a big scarcity of CNC operators. So that was the first the course we identified to start with. Then with the focus on these top 10 skills, we started working on developing a skill center in one of the industry chamber. So this is actually in India, these chambers, most of the chambers don't have the skill development centers. So this idea is very new to them. And this is mainly the German model actually. Some of them, we took them to Germany, and to understand the German model, how the chambers work in Germany. And each chamber is actually having their own skill centers to train their required manpower. So in the same concept, we try to actually develop a skill center, and we supported them in capacity building and completed the activity in next 2 to 3 months. And we developed the structure, how it works, and what are the courses they have to actually implement, and how these programs getting funding. And all that information was given to them in the form of capacity building. We trained few of them on the actual affiliation activities, training activities and all. And finally, we started with a pilot training program to make it successful. And the first program we conducted was CNC programming and operator program. It went on up to 15 months. It was a dual program, and where initially the basic theory program was conducted, theory training was conducted at one of the industry training center. Then they went on
Sorry,
to apprenticeship.
Yeah. I need to come in briefly because we want to have enough time for the discussion. Could you wrap up in the next 2 minutes?
Sure, I will do it. Yeah. Then we completed that pilot model. Then we helped them to complete the placement for them. The students were actually placed in the same company. Go to next slide, Katerina. Yeah, these are some of the industry associations we worked. We nearly worked around with around 14,000 plus employees in MSMEs in large and small scale industries. Go to next slide. And these are some of the roles and responsibilities. Due to shortage of time, I think we will share this presentation with everyone. Maybe you can just go through it. And next slide, Katerina. And these are some of the key practices. One is the capacity building of these industry associations and developing the skill development units in these industries, and developing the successful partnerships and developing the demand-led cooperative VT models. Can go to next slide, the last slide, I think. Yeah. So these are some of the impacts. So in the last 6-7 years, we have trained around 14,000 plus skilled resources, and instructors, around 2,500 instructors we have trained, involving around 400 plus MSMEs directly, and totally around 110 new partnerships and collaborations were developed in conducting all these training programs. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And sorry for cutting you a bit short, but we have a lot of questions.
Okay.
And we're going to the discussion now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. just for everyone as a reminder, if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A section. There are already some questions there. So if you go to the Q&A section, you can give us some thumbs up or a like or a comment to a question if you want to know a bit more. And if you give a thumbs up, I know which questions you find the most interesting you want to have addressed first. There was one question on, I think, Gudrun, I would point that to you. How would you advise small municipalities and other administrative bodies with low technical and IT capacity or also limited resources to proceed with skill supply and demand mapping? And then maybe, Marco, you can come in after. You can also find the questions in the Q&A section at the bottom if I read them too fast.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. My response would be for contexts where in general you see that there is limited capacity at the most decentralized levels of governance. And so I think there are two things we would need to do here. One is to do a capacity gap assessment. So it's not that such measures do not exist, or this, because of a just transition context, it's going to be the first time any region is going to have to think about jobs and skills and so on. These are also important political issues. So there would be a base infrastructure that is present there, whether it's a skill development council or whether it's an informal structure where alternate, what are some of like the employment options, the information for that exists. And so one, we have to do a capacity gap assessment, and for which there are several modules and governance experts, who do this for a living. And so which helps understand what are some of the challenges with the existing structure. Oftentimes we see that whenever we see a big skill development scheme being launched or an announcement, it's about what needs to be skilled. But what Just Energy Transition is asking is who needs to be skilled along with the what skilling, right? Which is not so much a part of the skill development imagination on who are we skilling, right? So one is the capacity gap. So what are some of the things that local government is already getting right, and where are those gaps? And second is, if we are introducing any innovative solutions, so say like in my presentation when I mentioned the use of tech to do the skill matching exercise, then what form should that innovation take? It's one thing to say, X country's local government uses AI and uses it quite effectively, but the way in which we are introducing a newer solution would really matter in developing that sort of local capacity to do a skill matching exercise. That said, sometimes it's a matter of looking. So when we started the research, we looked around and we found that India has qualification packs. We have, national occupational standards. Of course, it's a long list of skills that any worker category should have, but it's there for almost every profession, right? So to really break that down, if you're using AI to do the skill matching, then let's really break that down and train accordingly, given what the current capacities already are.
Thank you so much. Maybe Ravi or Marco, does one of you want to come in on either the perspective on industry or of workers, on how would you advise small municipalities to go about this? Otherwise, we can also go to the next question. Next question. Okay. Gunjan, this is again to you. It says, if you train the coal workers for cleaner jobs and then they quit and change jobs and like to go to better and cleaner sectors, these vacancies of the workers will be easily filled by new workers, because in India, it's quite difficult to find a job, at least the assumption of the person asking the question. And they ask, how do you solve this problem of the positions being refilled again?
Right. I think I spoke to Dickie last week or so. And so I can definitely connect separately as well, because I'm not sure how big a problem really is it, right? So is the question asking that coal coal mine workers are skilled for alternate green energy jobs, let's just assume. When they do access these jobs and they decide to move on to better jobs, and somebody else fills in that job. So I'm not seeing where the problem really is. So, because yes, there is, depending on the worker category you're talking about, skilled, highly skilled, low skilled, it really depends on the job. The excessive labor supply really depends on the skill category as well. And if there is this sort of an imperfect market offering this solution of filling vacancies and gaps, so I'm not really clear on like how deep the challenge really is. The challenge at this point is not knowing enough about the skills of workers and what are some of the obvious job matches that they have. And that's really where I was coming from.
Okay, I think Dickie wants to come in. Please keep it short because we have a lot of other questions that we want to go through, but you're allowed now to speak with, you can turn your mic on.
I just want to know if there is a situation like this, and then you keep train, do a lot of capacity building, but just only go and out, because as soon as they are well trained, and then they will move, and then somebody else will fill the vacancies that left by the workers that move. So my question is, are there any techniques or something that maybe then at least then can stop this to happen? Because if we talk about the low-level workers, yes, they do need a lot of capacity building, but of course the engineers and the higher level, they can move to other companies easily, but not to the local workers. Thank you.
So I think, Dickie, the challenge you're mentioning is of the sunk cost of having trained a worker who eventually moves on from that job. Is that right? I know.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay. That's exactly what I was saying, that I don't see it so much as a sunk cost. The objective of a just energy transition work is for the worker to find a decent employment elsewhere. Right? Now, if the worker eventually upskills further and moves on, I think that's generally how labor market flows. So I'm not seeing it, I don't really see it as a challenge that we need to put in measures to prevent from happening.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next question. If you know each other, and maybe you can carry this discussion also out offline afterwards. If there are further comments to make. Another question to Marco. Well, coal mining workers, especially the direct jobs, are heavily involved under the trade unions in the structural process of structural change. What about the workers in indirect jobs? I know that this is not so much the case in Germany, but maybe you, how can the coal mining industry involve them more?
Yes, this is also an important question, because there are about 14,000 to 20,000 people in the coal sector in the bigger companies, and also about 40,000 people in the SMEs who are doing services for the coal companies. So for this people, this is a big question about future and business cases for them. Do they have something like this? But we have to see that in Germany we have this big shortage of skilled workers. We have a competition between the regions for the workers. So if you are a skilled worker, you can leave your company and get a new job in one day. We have a lot of regions, their employers are waiting about 150 40 days to get a new worker. So I think it's not about it's not about unemployment. It's about getting good jobs and get a good regional development. It's it's more a problem for the companies than for the workers in the end. And also, as I said, the funds also from the European Union, the German funds, they are supporting especially the SMEs. So that these companies and also the workers can get support from these funds for upskilling and so on. It's also to leave from the coal sector to the battery sector to the automotive sector and so on, because these are the growing sectors in Germany, and especially in East Germany, we have a big sector or growing sector in battery development and so on, and so they can change to this, also semiconductor sector and so on, but most of these companies are focused on the workers from the coal sector, and they give them money to come to them, about 5,000 euros, so around about $5,000 to come to them. So it's a big competition in the labor market in Germany between the workers and especially the skilled workers in the coal sector. That's why the most coal companies try to give the people more money and so on, that they stay in their company, because it's a question about the energy sector and energy security at all, that we have enough people who are working there. So it's a bit different, I think, to other regions in the world.
Very interesting. Maybe like adding to this or leeching onto this, because you mentioned the EV industry. There's a question to you, Ravi, about the EV sector. Which upskilling courses or which skills were identified as needed for the EV sector, and maybe also how long and especially intensive are these reskilling programs usually?
Yes, currently we are moving into a green skills project. Already we are focusing on some of the job roles related to EV sector now. Currently, we have identified a few of the areas which are in demand. So mostly in India now, the electric vehicle growth is very fast, and many vehicles are already on the road, and the service mechanics, electric vehicle service mechanic job role is in very high demand, and we are trying to actually train some of the ITI students, vocational training students in this to just to bridge the gap, because in ITIs this course actually not started, and it is going to start in next 1 or 2 years. So to bridge this gap, we have already trained around 500 ITI students as a pilot batch. So in EV service mechanic course, this is one of the area, and other one is EV assembly technician course, which is also in demand, and that also can be taken into consideration.
Great, thank you so much. I will address 3 more questions. One is going to you, Gunjan, again on the skill mapping, because I think people find that really, really interesting. And actually quite relevant in order to, design reskilling, upskilling programs. I see the other presenters nodding. So would you recommend doing that on the local level, or rather on the district or province level? Like, which level should this be started at?
Thank you. Good question. So I would, and this is what we are also doing, is we are fielding a much shorter qualitative research survey, so a handful of 50 workers, to understand migration preferences. We know from existing literature in India that workers are not very resistant to migrating out of the local immediate 5 kilometer, which is where coal dependence is the highest, 5 to 10 kilometers. So they're okay moving away from that 10 kilometers, but they're also okay moving to another district or another state. Given you know some sort of historical migration pattern as well in India. And so the challenge is, and the way we've thought about it is, if we see the gendered worker, then thinking of a more localized alternate employment and skill matching becomes important. And what are those regional repurposing options? But when thinking of a more mobile worker, because migration itself is also gendered. So when thinking of a more spatially mobile worker, then there is little holding us to having to look for an matching skill within the district, so to say. Look at a province level, which is at a state level, as long as the jobs are within the state level, they should be all right. And having said that, the nature of coal, at least in India, but intuitively it makes sense to be the same anywhere else, is that because coal is such an important raw material, all the other industries start coming up around it. So in that, coal becomes that base for an industrial belt. And so I don't think that the spatial spread for alternate jobs would be as much of a problem unless we are insisting that it has to be gray to green, because then the coal regions are yet to attract green and other provinces have already gone ahead with their green plans and so on.
Great, thank you. Maybe another question regarding your presentation, because you said that 70% of coal mining workers are interested in working in agriculture, but wages are often fairly low in agriculture. Could you elaborate a bit on this?
Yeah, so that's not our research. That's research coming out of the region from other organizations that where I think they spoke to about 6,000 workers and realized that 70% of them would prefer going back to agriculture, not in case their current job does not continue. And so I agree with your reservation as well, right? So the whole idea is not for workers to find just any alternate job or livelihood option for survival. If coal is an organized sector and which comes with certain benefits, then those benefits should be matching in the alternate job that they get. The least we can do is matching wages and other non-wage benefits, and which most likely will not come from agriculture, because agriculture will have its own precarity. India is looking at, thinking of what would agriculture is solidly in the middle of climate adaptation conversations. So I agree with you there that simply thinking of which is what the point I was looking to make. So thank you for asking the question, is simply looking at what a worker's preference is as a policy thinker is not going to suffice in terms of providing sustainable alternate work options. We're going to have to situate it into alternate work sectors that are able to match the wage and non-wage benefits and are also in response to future shocks that may be because of a change in international environment and other factors.
Great, thank you so much. And sorry about, we have come to the end, so we'll not be addressing the other questions anymore, but I see that sometimes people have also commented, and we'll share the presentations after, so you can have a look in more detail again. Before we come to the closing and the conclusion, I would like everyone to take a couple of minutes to fill in the feedback survey, because this is really helpful for us to know when you organize these exchanges, to understand also where you're coming from, what your background is a little bit more. And yeah, of course, we are always looking to improve these kind of events. So please take the time to fill out the survey. And the form that you can fill out is also posted in the chat in case you don't have your mobile phone handy or cannot scan QR codes at the moment. Great. While people are still filling out the form, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Götz for some closing remarks. Götz, you're still muted.
Okay, thanks, Katharina. Thank you very much, Gunjan. Thank you, Ravi Shankar, and thank you, Marco, for your very impressive presentations. And yeah, I think we know a lot about the skills that workers in coal mining have. We also know about, we can elaborate on the skills need in future technologies. And one thing I learned is that structural change to new technologies can also offer new opportunities for women in higher skills sectors. That would be a positive effect that I learned upon. Marco again highlighted the necessity of consensus in the regions, a dialogue process, and a consensus about coal phase out. That is so important to organize the structural change process. And I think we have instruments and we have lots of flexibility to organize skilling processes. We can organize collaboration between the private sector and skilling institutions. And I think then skilling can be organized in a practical way. And there is a lot of experience on these issues there. Thank you very much for presenting that, Ravi Shankar, and thank you also, Katharina. And that were my conclusions. Thanks everybody for staying with us during this discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Götz. Thank you also from my side to all the speakers. Thank you for your active participation and the questions to those who listened in. We had some questions prepared, but there was no need to use them at any point. And yeah, you see here the contact details if you want to get in touch with Götz or me through the project. If you want to stay in touch with our project in general, please don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. We will give you updates on these kind of events. There are other events coming up, so stay tuned. If you have any questions on the project, you can either reach out to me or Götz or to the project team address, and we will share all the slides and also the recording online on our Knowledge Hub. Yeah, so all the material will be made available. Again,